Hello everyone, today I would like to show you the way I painted Canoptek Scarab swarms. This is tabletop sort of plus paint job. I don't aim any higher, to be honest. So first I prepare everything that I need to have at hand. This means 6 40mm bases to put the models on. And then I search the sprues for the bits required. In this case it doesn't really matter which swarms you add onto the bases with the rocky thingies underneath, but there's one little caveat. There are 3 swarms and only 2 bits of rocks. I've just pointed over here to the swarm legs, to the scarab legs, sorry. They are very delicate, so be very gentle when cutting them out. You might break off the leg if you're not careful. So over here you can see those 2 rocks, and you won't find the third. So don't be me, don't look for it for 10 seconds. When you've got that sorted, all the bits out, put together as they go, and now it's time for removing all the mold lines and sprue bits that you don't really need on the model. I use my X-Acto knife, and as you can see I keep blowing the dirt away from the blade itself and from the model. I'd like to keep it clean that way. Be very gentle, these models are very flimsy. You can break them off quite easily. So with the approach measure twice, fit twice, dry fit, and glue only once, so you don't have to unglue it and break it off. Try it first. You will see that there's only one correct way to put these models together. Unfortunately, they will go in a very specific way. My hint over here is to check which way the base, the rocks will go with the model, with the swarm attached. Glue the rocky bit and leave the swarm unglued. It will make it easier for you to put any texture paint, put any sand, anything else on the base. You will see later that I'm struggling with the Citadel texture paint, with putting it on. The last bit is I'd like to clean off the bases, you know, the sprue bits from the bases. For some reason 40mm bases have those things sticking out, 30mm bases don't. So now we move on to painting the models, and I like to start off with Vallejo black primer. I use Angel Giraldes way of using a small plastic box to mix my paint outside of airbrush. This prevents me from clogging the airbrush with very thick paint. Next I use a hairdryer to speed up the drying process. As you can see, I've covered the models thoroughly and I can move on to the first color, which is Lead Belcher. I use layer version of the paint since it has more pigment and I have more control over how I dilute it. And again, plastic box, thinner, and there we go. Next, a little bit of love from Iron Breaker, a small, delicate dry brush over the top. This will create the pop effect of the metal, and you will see why when I compare the two. I love using AK Interactive products. They make my job and life much easier. So I cover the bits that I want to cover with Rust. I go over the top, I mean I go over the lines. Any dirt that I add right now I can dilute later and add to the rusty, dirty effect. After the pigment has dried, you can use odorless thinner to move the pigment around, clean the flat surfaces, stain them a little bit. Sometimes I even use like a half-dry brush to filter them with the brown color in this case. I also use clean cotton swabs to clean the excess and sort of make it really nice and clean in certain areas. And again, you can see the cleaned and not cleaned versions of the scarabs. Next is the game color air for the glow, and I use two colors, as you can see. First, I do the base and I spray it thoroughly. Next, I use the lighter color to make the color pop really well. This is not the last step for this color. Here you can see the comparison of highlighted and not highlighted versions of the models. And the last thing for the green, I use a little bit of Ulthuan gray for the small dots on the green globes, just to sort of highlight it even more. Coming back to the bases, I use Martian Iron Crust, and as you can see, I mentioned earlier, I'm really struggling putting it nice and cleanly without making the models really dirty. Next, I use chromelec weathering powder red rust to make the models themselves really dirty, to make them believable that they were actually walking on this surface. Just as that, I put it on their legs, I put it on their little butts, and a little bit of the rest of the bodies. I mean, the bodies are the butts in this case, so I just cover them a little bit in the pigment. Lastly, pigment fixer from AK Interactive. I use very little pressure. It's like hardly even pushing any liquid out of my airbrush, and it still moves the pigment around, as you can see in a second. Poof, and it moves it out of the base. But I've put so much that it doesn't really matter. Next, some drying time to speed up the process. All in all, I think all those 6 bases took me an hour to do. And as you can see, I have some pigment on the edges of the bases, and I don't want it like that. It will be visible when I cover them with black paint. So I use a little bit of sanding file to remove it. It's just a little, touch up over here. And then Abaddon Black to really clean out the edges of the bases and to make them really stand out from the red. They are not dirty, they are nice and clean black color. At this stage, the only thing left is the tufts, so the base decoration, and I use Dead Grass from Paintforge. This is a local company, I use them, I really like their product. Obviously you can use anything that you've got locally, as long as you like the color. I chose the green the green dead color, because it fits the green on the models and the red on the bases. It sort of ties the two together. . And there it is. These are the models. When compared to the old Necron swarms, they look much, much better. I hope you guys enjoyed it. There are more tutorials like that coming.